The library was silent in a way that made every sound feel amplified, the faint creak of the chair beneath me, the quiet scratch of my pen across the paper, the rustle of pages as I flipped them. Rows of shelves loomed like watchful giants, their spines lined with stories and knowledge, their shadows stretching long in the dim glow of the overhead lamps. It was late, long after most students had left, but I stayed. I told myself it was because I needed the quiet, that the library was the only place I could focus without distraction. But as the minutes slipped into hours, I wondered if maybe I just didn't want to go home yet. My phone buzzed on the table, the glow of the screen cutting through the soft darkness. My husband's name lit up. "Are you still studying? Don't stay too long. Come home soon, Red Heart." I stared at the message, chewing on my lip. I typed out a quick reply, "Almost done. Just a bit more work." It wasn't a lie. Not entirely. But I couldn't explain the rest of it, the way I lingered here as though waiting for something, though I couldn't say what. The silence pressed closer, and I bent back over my notes, the scent of old paper and dust wrapping around me like a blanket. My eyelids grew heavy, my focus slipping, until the creak of the library door jolted me back upright. I glanced up, and there he was, Ethan. The grad student who worked in the history department, someone I had seen around campus more times than I could count. Tall, sharp-eyed, always carrying that casual confidence like it was part of him. "You're still here?" he asked, his voice low, echoing softly in the empty space. I blinked, suddenly aware of how alone we were, how quiet the library had become. "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. "Too much to finish." He stepped further inside, his footsteps muffled against the carpeted floor. I thought I was the only one crazy enough to stay this late. His lips curved into a grin, and somehow the room felt smaller, warmer, less empty. I laughed lightly, though my throat felt dry. "Guess that makes two of us." Ethan dropped his bag onto the table across from mine and sat down, leaning casually back in the chair. His presence filled the space instantly, his gaze flicking to the book scattered in front of me. "You always work this hard?" he asked, curiosity laced with something else, something harder to name. I shrugged, trying to sound casual. "It's the only way to keep up." His eyes lingered on me, steady, unblinking, until I looked away. I pressed my pen back to the page, but the words blurred, my hand trembling slightly. And in that quiet moment, with the shelves looming high above us and the air so still it felt dangerous, I realized something I hadn't before. I wasn't alone anymore. And I wasn't sure if that was a good thing. Ethan leaned back in the chair across from me, his grin easy, his eyes sharp. The silence of the library wrapped around us, broken only by the faint hum of the heating system and the occasional whisper of pages turning in the distance. "You always stay this late?" he asked, his tone casual but edged with curiosity. "Sometimes," I admitted, scribbling something down just to have a reason to look away. "It's quiet here. Easier to focus." He chuckled softly, leaning forward so his elbows rested on the table. "Or maybe you just like hiding away. You don't strike me as the type who enjoys the noise." The words hit closer than I expected, and I froze, my pen pausing mid-sentence. "What makes you say that?" Ethan tilted his head, watching me with a steady intensity. "You're here almost every evening. I notice things." The air between us shifted, heavier, as if his words carried more than just observation. My heart skipped once, hard, and I forced myself to look down at my notes again, pretending they mattered. But then he stood, casually dragging his chair around the table until he was next to me. The scrape of the metal legs against the floor echoed too loudly in the empty library, making my pulse quicken. "You don't mind if I sit here, do you?" he asked, already settling in. I shook my head quickly. "No, it's fine." He leaned over slightly, his arm brushing against mine as he glanced at the book I had open. The contact was small, accidental maybe, but it sent a current through me I hadn't felt in a long time. "You're working on Renaissance history?" he asked, nodding at the text. "Yeah," I said, my voice tighter than I meant. "It's for a paper." He smiled faintly. I could help, if you want. That's my area. I opened my mouth to respond, but just then my phone buzzed on the table. My husband's name glowed on the screen. Still at the library? Don't overdo it. I'll wait up for you, Red Heart. My stomach twisted. I flipped the phone over quickly, hiding the message, and forced a smile at Ethan. Everything okay? He asked, his tone light but his eyes curious. Yeah, I said quickly, too quickly. Just, home. He nodded slowly, his gaze lingering a moment longer before turning back to the book in front of us. His shoulder brushed mine again, this time slower, deliberate. And I didn't move away. Ethan pulled the heavy book closer, leaning in so that his shoulder pressed lightly against mine. The scent of him, clean soap, faint cologne, a trace of coffee, reached me instantly, filling the narrow space between us. Here, he said, pointing to a passage on the page. His finger brushed so close to mine that when I shifted to follow his gesture, our hands touched. Skin against skin. It should have been nothing. Just two people looking at the same book. But the spark that shot through me was undeniable, sharp and electric, making my breath catch in my throat. I jerked my hand back instinctively, but his eyes followed mine, steady, calm, like he'd felt it too. And instead of apologizing, he let his hand linger on the page, deliberately slow, as if daring me to move closer again. You're nervous, he said softly, his tone low, almost teasing. I'm not, I lied, my voice barely more than a whisper. His lips curved in the faintest smirk, though he didn't press the point. He simply leaned closer, his arm brushing mine again as his voice dipped lower. You don't have to be. The silence of the library wrapped tighter around us, pressing down until I could hear nothing but the rush of blood in my ears. My pen slipped from my hand, clattering softly to the table, and neither of us reached for it. Just then, my phone buzzed again. The sound was loud in the stillness. My husband's name glowed across the screen, another message waiting. Don't forget to eat something before you come home. I left food for you. Red Heart. The sweetness of it pierced through me, sharp as a blade. My throat tightened, guilt twisting deep inside. I reached for the phone, but Ethan's hand was quicker. He picked it up, glanced at the name, then set it back down carefully, closer to him than to me. You should answer, he murmured, though the look in his eyes told a different story. I didn't move. My hands trembled in my lap, my body torn in two directions, between the man waiting at home, and the one sitting so close now, watching me with a heat that made it impossible to breathe. And when his arm brushed mine again, slower, deliberate, I didn't pull away. The library had grown even quieter, the soft hum of the heating the only sound left. The overhead lights flickered faintly, leaving pockets of shadow that stretched between the endless shelves. It didn't feel like a place for studying anymore. It felt like we weren't supposed to be here at all. Ethan leaned a little closer, his voice low, as though even the walls might be listening. You know, I've seen you in here more nights than I can count. Always with your books, always alone. I forced a smile, trying to steady my voice. Some of us actually care about keeping up. He smirked, his gaze unwavering. That's not it. You hide here. You want the quiet, but maybe you're waiting for someone to notice. The words hit like a dart. My heart raced, my fingers tightening on the edge of the table. You don't know me well enough to say that. Don't I? He murmured, leaning so close that his shoulder pressed fully against mine now. I think I do. I shifted in my seat, heat flooding my face. I told myself to move away, to stand, to leave. But instead I stayed, frozen in place, as though my body had already betrayed me. Ethan's hand slid casually across the table, his fingers brushing the corner of my notebook. You don't let people in easily, do you? I swallowed, my throat dry. I don't know what you mean. I think you do, he said softly, his eyes locking onto mine. I think you've been waiting for something, or maybe someone, without admitting it. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, until the sound of my phone vibrating on the table shattered it. My husband's name glowed on the screen. A call this time. I froze, staring at it, every nerve in my body screaming to pick it up. Ethan glanced at the phone, then at me, his smirk deepening. Go on, he whispered. Tell him where you are. Tell him who you're with. My pulse thundered in my ears. I couldn't breathe. I reached for the phone, my hand trembling, and swiped to answer. Hey, I said quickly, my voice higher than usual. Yeah, I'm still at the library. Almost finished. His voice came warm and unsuspecting on the other end. Okay, don't push yourself too hard. I'll wait up. I swallowed hard. I'll be home soon. When I hung up, guilt crashed over me, sharp and suffocating. But Ethan was still watching, his expression calm, certain, unreadable. You lied, he said simply, his tone more like a statement than an accusation. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Instead, I lowered my eyes, my hands trembling as I closed the book in front of me. And in that moment, I realized he was right, this wasn't just studying anymore. This was something far more dangerous. Ethan didn't move back after my call ended. If anything, he leaned closer, his arm brushing mine fully now, his presence filling every inch of space I had left. The smell of old paper and dust mixed with the warmth of his cologne, wrapping around me until I could hardly breathe. You're good at pretending, he said quietly, his voice carrying a calm certainty that made me shiver. Pretending what? I asked, forcing my tone to sound sharp, but my hands betrayed me, they trembled slightly on the desk. That you don't feel this, he murmured, his eyes dropping briefly to where our arms touched. His fingers shifted, brushing against mine with deliberate slowness. That you don't notice how close we are. How you haven't pulled away. Heat rushed through me, my chest tight. I jerked my hand back instinctively, but he caught it before I could, his fingers curling gently around mine. His touch wasn't forceful. It was steady. Patient. Certain. My pulse hammered in my ears. Ethan, this isn't, the words tangled in my throat, weak, unfinished. This isn't what, he pressed, his lips curving into the faintest smirk. Right? Safe? Allowed? His thumb brushed slowly over the back of my hand, making my whole body tremble. Maybe. But tell me honestly, do you want me to stop? I should have said yes. I should have ripped my hand free, stood up, and walked out. But my mouth stayed shut. My silence was the answer. He leaned closer, so close that his breath warmed my cheek. I've noticed you for a long time, he whispered. The way you sit here, night after night. The way you bite your lip when you read. The way you avoid looking at me too long in the hall. My lips parted, my body betraying me with the truth I refused to speak. Every word sank deeper, hitting places inside me I had tried to bury. You're wrong, I managed finally, though the protest sounded fragile, hollow. Am I? His hand squeezed mine gently, his eyes locked onto mine. Then tell me to let go. Tell me to leave. I opened my mouth, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I stayed frozen, my pulse pounding, my body screaming one truth I couldn't admit aloud. I didn't want him to let go. Just then, my phone lit up again on the table. My husband. A message. I'll warm up dinner for you when you get home. Drive safe. Red heart. The sight of it hit me like a punch, my throat tightening, guilt clawing up my chest. I turned the phone face down quickly, unable to bear the glow of his name. Ethan's thumb stroked across my knuckles again, pulling me back to him, grounding me in the dangerous warmth of his touch. You see, he murmured. If you really wanted to leave, you'd already be gone. And though every part of me screamed that I should get up, pull away, run, my hand stayed in his. And that silence said more than any words ever could. For a moment, I pulled my hand back, clutching it against my chest as if distance could save me. My pulse was still racing, the ghost of his touch lingering, hot and undeniable. I stood abruptly, the chair legs scraping against the floor, the sound echoing too loudly through the empty library. I should go, I said quickly, forcing the words out before I could take them back. It's late. Ethan didn't move. He leaned back in his chair, calm, watching me like he had all the time in the world. His eyes followed me as I paced toward the shelves, pretending to look at the spines of books I wasn't really reading. You say that, his voice broke through the silence, smooth and steady, but you don't mean it. I froze, my fingers tightening on a random book. You don't know what I mean. I know you're scared, he said, rising slowly from his chair. His footsteps were soft on the carpet, measured, deliberate. I know you're fighting yourself. But I also know you wouldn't still be here if you really wanted to leave. I turned sharply, the words catching in my throat. He was closer now, too close, his face half-lit by the dim glow of the lamp. My back brushed against the bookshelf as I instinctively stepped away, but there was nowhere left to go. This isn't, I started, my voice faltering. This isn't right. He stopped just inches away, his hand lifting slowly until his fingers brushed a strand of hair back from my face. His touch was light, almost tender, but it sent shivers racing down my spine. Maybe not, he whispered, his eyes locking on mine. But does it feel wrong? I swallowed hard, my body betraying me with the truth I couldn't say. My lips parted, but no sound came out. My phone buzzed suddenly on the table across the room, the vibration sharp and jarring in the heavy quiet. I looked toward it instinctively, my heart twisting. My husband. Another message. I'll wait up a little longer. Miss you. Guilt stabbed through me, raw and suffocating. My eyes burned as I looked away, unable to bear the thought of him waiting, trusting, loving me without question. Ethan's hand brushed my cheek again, gently turning my face back to his. Don't think about him right now, he murmured. Think about what you want. I shook my head weakly, tears pricking my eyes. I can't. But even as the words left my lips, I knew they were lies. Because I didn't move. I didn't step away. Instead, I stayed there, pinned between the shelves and him, my body trembling, my heart screaming one truth I couldn't deny anymore. I wanted this. And the terrifying part was, he knew it. The library had fallen into a silence so complete it felt unnatural, as though even the air was holding its breath. The lamps cast dim pools of light, leaving long stretches of shadow between the shelves. The smell of old paper and wood polish was heavy, and every sound, the faint squeak of a chair settling, the distant hum of the heater, echoed louder than it should. I stood frozen between two tall bookcases, my back pressed lightly against the shelves. My heart was pounding so hard I was certain he could hear it. Ethan moved slowly toward me, his footsteps muffled on the carpet, his gaze never breaking from mine. You're shaking, he said softly, his voice almost a whisper. I'm not, I whispered back, though the tremor in my hands betrayed me. You are. When he reached me, he didn't touch me right away. He simply stood there, close enough that his presence wrapped around me like heat. The scent of him, soap, cologne, something darker, flooded my senses, and my breath caught in my throat. Do you want me to stop? He asked, his voice low, steady. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. My lips trembled, my chest tight. Silence was my answer, and he seemed to know it. His hand lifted, brushing against the bookshelf beside my head as he leaned in just slightly. The movement caged me in, his body blocking the small space between me and the aisle. I could feel the warmth radiating off him, the heat of his breath so close to my cheek. Then tell me what you want, he murmured, his eyes fixed on mine. I swallowed hard, my throat dry, every nerve in me screaming to run, to push him away, to leave. But my body didn't move. My palms pressed flat against the shelves behind me, my chest rising and falling in shallow, uneven breaths. At that exact moment, my phone buzzed in my bag. The sound was sharp, startling in the silence. My husband's name flashed across the screen when I fumbled to pull it out. It's getting late. Please come home. Red heart. My eyes blurred as I stared at it, guilt twisting like a knife in my stomach. My husband's voice echoed in my head, his kindness, his trust, and here I was, pinned between shelves, trembling beneath the weight of another man's gaze. Before I could answer, Ethan's fingers brushed lightly against my wrist, lowering the phone gently back into my bag. "Don't," he whispered, his eyes locked on mine. "Not right now." And I didn't fight him. Instead, I let the phone fall silent, my breath hitching as his hand lingered on my wrist, warm and steady. His other hand pressed softly against the shelf beside me, closing the space further. We stood there, suspended in the dim light, every second stretching like forever. My mind screamed that this was wrong, that I should walk away. But my body stayed still, trembling, waiting for what I already knew was coming. And the terrifying truth was, I wanted it. The silence was unbearable now. I could hear my own pulse hammering in my ears, the shallow rasp of my breath as I stood pressed against the shelves. Ethan's arm was braced against the wood beside me, his body so close I could feel the heat radiating off him. His eyes held mine, steady, unflinching, daring me to deny what was already happening. "Tell me to stop," he whispered, his voice a low current that vibrated through me. I opened my mouth, but the word never came. My lips trembled, my chest rose and fell too quickly, and still I stayed pinned there, frozen in his gaze. Slowly, achingly slow, his hand lifted, brushing along my jawline with the barest touch of his fingertips. My skin burned beneath it, a shiver racing down my spine. My body leaned into him before my mind could catch up, betraying me completely. "See," he murmured, his breath ghosting against my cheek. "You don't want me to." The space between us disappeared inch by inch, my heart lurching with every fraction closer. I could smell him now, soap, paper, a faint trace of coffee, and the scent tangled with the sharp sweetness of guilt that clawed at my chest. His lips brushed mine, feather-light, almost not a kiss at all. My breath caught, my eyes fluttering shut as my body flooded with heat. For a split second, I thought maybe I'd pull away, maybe I'd stop this before it became real. But then I kissed him back. It was tentative at first, a trembling, uncertain meeting of lips. But the hesitation shattered in an instant. His mouth pressed harder against mine, urgent, hungry, as if we had been holding back for too long. I gasped softly, my hands lifting from the shelves to clutch at his shirt, holding him to me. The world narrowed to the heat of his lips, the rough edge of his breath, the pounding of my own heart. Somewhere in the distance, muffled against the heavy silence, my phone buzzed in my bag. Once. Twice. My husband. I knew it before I even looked. The guilt stabbed, sharp and merciless, but Ethan's hand slid into my hair, his lips devouring mine, and the guilt blurred into static. My body surged toward him, clinging, desperate, as if the kiss was the only thing keeping me alive. His hand at my waist pulled me tighter, pressing me against the shelves, the books rattling faintly at the force of it. I melted into him completely, my knees weak, my breath broken, my body betraying every vow, every promise I had made. When we finally pulled apart, gasping for air, his forehead rested against mine, his lips swollen, his voice ragged. "You can't pretend anymore," he whispered. And he was right. Because in that kiss, in the heat and the hunger and the trembling surrender, I had crossed a line I could never step back from. The kiss had broken something inside me, every wall, every excuse, every careful lie I told myself about control. When Ethan's lips left mine, it wasn't relief I felt. It was hunger. His hand slid from my waist up along my back, pulling me closer, pressing me so tightly against him I could feel the rhythm of his heartbeat pounding against my chest. My fingers tangled in his shirt, clutching, pulling, desperate for more. The shelves behind me rattled under the force of us, one loose book tumbling down and thudding softly to the carpet. The sound should have startled me, but it only drove me further into him, into the heat of his mouth finding mine again and again. I gasped against his lips as his hands explored, steady but eager, mapping out the curve of my waist, the line of my hips. My own hands betrayed me, sliding up over his shoulders, down his chest, memorizing every shape, every edge, as if I had the right to. The kiss deepened until the world blurred into nothing but us, the dim light, the dusty air, the rough scrape of the bookshelf at my back. I could hear the ragged sound of our breaths, the quiet, desperate urgency that filled the empty library like a storm no one else would ever witness. Then, as if the universe itself refused to let me forget, my phone buzzed again. Louder this time. Insistent. I froze for the briefest second, my chest heaving as I glanced down. My husband's name glowed against the screen. Are you okay? Haven't heard from you. Call me. Red heart. The word sliced through me, sharp and merciless. My breath hitched, my chest aching with guilt. But Ethan's lips found my neck, his breath hot against my skin, and the guilt tangled with something darker, something I didn't want to admit I craved. My fingers clutched at him harder, holding him there, even as my mind screamed at me to push him away. The phone buzzed again, vibrating against the wood of the table nearby. My husband was waiting, worrying, trusting. And I was here, in the dark silence of the library, letting another man unravel me piece by piece. When Ethan's hand slid lower, pulling me even closer, I didn't stop him. I couldn't. The books tumbled again as my back arched against the shelves, paper and dust raining softly around us. And in that moment, I knew the truth I had been denying all night. I had already chosen. Ethan's hands never left me as he guided us away from the open aisle, deeper between the tall shelves where the shadows were heavier, darker. My breath came fast, unsteady, as though every step carried me further from the life I knew and deeper into something forbidden. We stumbled into a small study alcove, the kind with a narrow wooden table wedged between the bookcases. Papers and forgotten notes lay scattered there, but Ethan swept them aside in a single motion, his lips never leaving mine. The flutter of paper echoed in the silence before falling flat to the floor, forgotten. He lifted me effortlessly onto the edge of the table, his hands gripping my hips with a certainty that stole the strength from my legs. I gasped softly as the wood pressed against me, my body arching instinctively toward him. Ethan, I breathed, but the name came out broken, torn between plea and surrender. His lips trailed from my mouth down the line of my jaw, finding the sensitive skin of my neck. My eyes fluttered shut, my fingers tightening in his hair as the heat of his breath sent tremors racing through me. Every nerve in me screamed this was wrong. Every vow, every promise I'd made pulled at me like chains. But his touch burned hotter than the guilt, and my body betrayed me, leaning into him, needing more. Then, my phone again. Loud this time. The vibration rattled in my bag on the floor, persistent, demanding. My husband. The glow of his name lit the darkness as the phone slid against the carpet. It's late. I'm worried. Please call me. Red heart. The words blurred before my eyes, guilt crashing over me in waves. My chest ached, my throat tight, and for a single fractured second I thought I might reach for it, might end this before it went any further. But Ethan's hands pressed firmer against me, pulling me closer, grounding me in the burning present. His lips claimed mine again, harder this time, urgent, and the phone's glow dimmed into darkness as it fell silent once more. The only thing left was the sound of our breaths, the scrape of wood against wood as the table shifted under our weight, and the terrifying realization that I didn't want him to stop. Not anymore. The table creaked beneath me as Ethan pressed closer, his hands firm on my hips, anchoring me in a storm I couldn't escape. His lips claimed mine again and again, deeper, hotter, until the world outside dissolved into nothing but shadows and breath and heat. I clung to him desperately, my fingers twisting in his shirt, dragging him closer, terrified of how much I needed this and unable to stop myself. His hands roamed with certainty, mapping every curve, every line, as if he had been waiting for this moment just as long as I had. The shelves rattled when my back hit them, books tumbling around us, the soft thuds echoing in the silence. Pages fluttered across the floor like fallen confessions, forgotten as his mouth trailed down my neck. My gasp cut through the quiet, sharp and breathless, the sound of someone I barely recognized. This is wrong, I whispered, my voice trembling, though my body betrayed the lie as I pulled him closer, arching against him. Then stop me, he murmured against my skin, his lips brushing fire along the edge of my collarbone. But I didn't stop him. I couldn't. The air grew heavier, hotter, filled with the ragged sound of our breaths, the desperate press of mouths and hands that wouldn't let go. I had thought of temptation as something abstract, something I could resist if it ever came close. But here, in the shadows of the library, temptation had a name, a body, a touch that unraveled me piece by piece. Then, the shrill buzz of my phone again. Louder this time, vibrating violently against the wood floor. My husband's name glowed across the screen, lighting up the scattered pages around us. Please, answer me. I'm worried. Where are you? Tears burned at the corners of my eyes. My chest clenched painfully, guilt tearing through me even as Ethan's lips silenced every thought, every reason. I reached blindly for the phone, my hand trembling, but Ethan caught it first. He set it aside gently, his eyes locking onto mine with a fire that burned away every excuse. Stay here, he whispered, his breath ragged. Stay with me. And in that moment, I did. I let go of every promise, every vow, every piece of the life waiting for me outside those walls. The shelves shook, the books fell, and the line I had sworn I'd never cross vanished beneath us. The night air was cold when I finally stepped outside, the heavy wooden doors of the library closing behind me with a thud that echoed in my chest. My skin still burned from Ethan's touch, my lips swollen, my body trembling as though I had just stepped out of a dream I wasn't supposed to have. The campus was deserted, silent, the glow of the street lamps stretching shadows across the pavement. Each step I took felt heavy, like my feet were dragging chains behind me. My phone was still warm in my pocket, filled with unanswered calls and messages I couldn't bear to read. I told myself I would feel relief once it was over, that the moment would pass and I could lock it away like a secret diary shoved to the back of a drawer. But with every step, the weight grew heavier, crushing, suffocating. By the time I reached my car, my reflection in the window startled me, flushed cheeks, disheveled hair, eyes I barely recognized. A stranger stared back at me. A woman who had crossed a line she swore she never would. The drive home blurred. Streetlights streaked across the windshield like silent witnesses, each one accusing, each one reminding me that my husband was waiting. When I opened the door to our house, the warmth hit me instantly, the faint smell of the dinner he had kept aside, the soft hum of the television left on low. And there he was, sitting on the couch, still awake, still waiting just like he'd promised. He stood the moment he saw me, his face lighting up with relief. You're home, he said gently, crossing the room to take my bag from my shoulder. You must be exhausted. I'll warm up your food. The kindness in his voice shattered me. I could barely meet his eyes, terrified he would see everything written across my face. My throat tightened, tears threatening, but I forced a smile, fragile and thin. I'm okay, I whispered, my voice breaking. Just tired. He kissed my forehead, his touch so tender it made my chest ache. Then rest, he murmured. I'm glad you're home. I nodded, swallowing hard, but inside I was unraveling. The image of Ethan's eyes, his hands, his lips still burned into me, tangled with the memory of the man standing before me now, the man who trusted me without question, who had been calling and worrying while I gave myself to someone else. That night, lying beside my husband as he drifted peacefully to sleep, I stared at the ceiling, my body rigid, my heart pounding. His steady breathing was a lullaby of loyalty, of love I didn't deserve. And I realized something that cut deeper than any guilt I had ever known. The worst betrayal wasn't what had happened in the library. It was coming home, smiling, pretending nothing had changed, when deep inside, everything had.